If you're watching this broadcast today, the chances are good that you already love dark skies and place a lot of value on a starry night sky. But we know that in order to protect dark night skies around the world, we need to bring many more new people into this movement. That will only happen if enough people care about the night. But to care enough about something to preserve it, we need to understand it. And for that, we turn to educators. So it is therefore my pleasure to introduce one of the most effective astronomy communicators around, and that's Mike Simmons. Mike is the founder and past president of Astronomers Without Borders, a nonprofit organization dedicated to fostering understanding by creating relationships around the universal appeal of astronomy. Beginning in the 1970s, Mike held leadership and advisory positions with the Los Angeles Astronomical Society and served on the staff of Griffith Observatory. He was the founding president of the Mount Wilson Observatory Association and served on its board for many years. Mike's writing has been featured in publications like Scientific American and Astronomy magazine, and he is a contributing editor at Sky and Telescope magazine. For the United Nations declared International Year of Astronomy in 2009, Mike organized the Cornerstone project called 100 Hours of Astronomy in over 100 countries. He has received numerous awards and accolades for his education and outreach work, and in 2003, he was honored by the International Astronomical Union with the name Simmons for the asteroid number 22294. So welcome, Mike, and thanks for taking the time to speak to us today. With such an impressive resume, did I get all of that right?
Sounded good to me.
All right.
Whatever. I keep busy.
You do keep busy. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're up to these days?
Well, right now there's a new website that's about to launch that has to do with the astronomy industry. And I'm doing that with a partner. And that's a lot of fun. I'll be leading more when we get back to normal astronomy tours to some interesting places in addition to eclipses that I'll show a little bit about, and I have some other plans in the works that just I won't talk about much now, but that are going to take a while to get together. So just stay tuned.
Keeping busy, I can tell.
Yeah, always.
Well, today Mike will share with us his experience about presenting astronomy to diverse audiences all over the world and tell us why in our connected world, protecting the night sky is more important than ever. So with that, take it away, Mike.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk about astronomy as the uniting force. What that means exactly, I will explain. In fact, mostly I'll demonstrate. I like to use a lot of pictures from around the world, and I see people popping in here with where they're observing from. Jeff, I noticed you up first. Looks like so far all in the US, but we've got friends all around the world. Now, the thing about astronomy is that it is in every culture, and it has been throughout time. And while music, food, other cultural things are universal, they aren't exactly the same everywhere. But what I found when I started traveling around the world, chasing eclipses at first and doing other things, was that people are doing exactly the same thing that we are. And it worked very well to connect people. So let me go through some of that and I'll show you. Now, the world didn't pay too much attention to the sky during the 1900s until this happened. And of course, Sputnik caught everybody's attention, but it was not really something that united people. It was exactly the opposite because we were in a race. Now, the US won this race to get to the moon first, but that's not the way it was interpreted. Around the world, people saw this as something that humanity had done. And when Neil Armstrong said, for all mankind, I think that was on the plaque, that was the way it was taken. People felt like we had accomplished something wherever they were. And of course, with this is an Apollo 8 image. There are many Earthrise images, but these really changed our perspective. When we look back and saw the Earth as a planet, and it's something completely different that really shook our understanding of where we are and what we're standing on. And of course, the person that made a really big difference with all of that was Carl Sagan. Now, this is the image of the pale blue dot, And it's just a little speck inside of there, where you can barely see it on there, taken by Voyager from 4 billion miles away. And you can see, most of you have heard this. If you haven't, you need to hear him reciting this, not me. Look again at that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. That little dot there. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known. I'm rushing through this. He does it very dramatically. So these are things that change our view. And you're going to wonder why I'm talking about astronomy and I'm just looking back at Earth from space. I'll show you in a minute. This was an image taken by Cassini looking back at Earth. And yes, the Earth is in that view, but it's hard to see. If we zoom in a little bit, we can see that dot right there. That is the Earth and also the moon right next to it on the right there. Now, when astronauts go into space, they experience what is called the overview effect. And this is when they not just look back on Earth and say, oh, I can't see the borders. It's that they see the Earth like that Earthrise image. They see it as a planet in space. We see the pictures, and this was a revelation when I talked to Frank White, who wrote this book about the overview effect, that they don't just see the Earth below. There is no below. They see the blackness of space, and somewhere in the midst of that, very close to them, is the Earth. It is a profound change in their perspective. One of the other people that wrote about this, Ron Guerin, who has been in space many times, and he wrote about the orbital perspective. And these are the few people who have had the chance to see the Earth from space and experience that overview effect. And Edgar Mitchell, who went to the moon and just was in awe coming back from the moon, looking at Earth, said in a very crude way that he wanted to drag every politician up into space and make them look at the Earth from up there because there wouldn't be so many troubles. Well, most of us aren't going to make it up there. So we can only look out. But astronomy does give us an overview effect, and I'm going to show you how that works. And many of you experienced it. Now, looking at this image right here, this could be in any desert, in any sand dune, anywhere in the world. And I understand a lot of you have never seen a sand dune, but in the southwestern United States, they're common here. That one happens to be in Iran. This one happens to be Death Valley here in California, not far from me. Happens to have been taken by an Iranian photographer who I know lives here in Southern California now. So we're seeing the same sky. We're sharing that same sky. Here in a classic picture taken by Wally Paholka is our view of, I'm going to turn on the laser pointer here, right here. You people are probably going to recognize, many of you, well, hopefully all, if you've done Globe at night, you recognize this, right? So this is the constellation Orion seen rising over Yosemite Valley in the Northern Hemisphere. Whereas in this one taken in the Southern Hemisphere, we have it here. And instead of Orion's sword hanging down, it's pointing up. He's upside down as far as we're concerned here. But everybody on the planet can see this constellation because it's on the equator. So it doesn't matter where you are, you'll see at least some part of it. Another example is here. Now, this is taken by a friend in China, and this is over a part of the Himalayas. The Milky Way, seen from there, looking in a very wide panorama here. Wally Paholka again, taking a Milky Way image from the top of Mauna Kea in Hawaii. So this is a tropical view that if you do it at the right time of year, right time of night, you can catch it. And here's the Milky Way once again, but in this case, it's taken from the south. And we know that for a few reasons. One is we have the large and small Magellanic Clouds here. and the other is, there's only one place where you see these, that's Easter Island. So it's the same Milky Way. And when we look at it, that Milky Way, especially in a view like this one, you can see the equatorial bulge. You see where the center of the galaxies is. We're out on somewhere out towards about 2/3 of the way out towards the edge of the galaxy, however you define edge. And this just shows us where we are. The Milky Way is not a place that's out there in the sky on the horizon or up above. It's where we are. We live there, and we're on a planet, one of these stars here. Not one of the stars in the picture, but a star in the Milky Way. Another thing that's easier to understand is seeing the moon above so many different places. At any one time, the moon's going to be visible from half the area of the Earth. In this case, it's over the Taj Mahal in India. But here it's over, just rising over the Parthenon in Athens, in Greece. A composite of the moon rising in Yazd in the central, in the southern desert of Iran. Here it's rising over the skyline of Boston. Over in Europe, here's a totally eclipsed moon, and with a little streak of a meteor there for extra. Rising or setting, I'm not sure which, next to the Matterhorn. So all of these famous places that we see, we can see the moon from them. And in fact, in one experience I had when I was in Iraq, before starting Astronomers Without Borders, I'll show some pictures from that here in a minute, actually. And a minister of Kurdistan, where I was, that I met, said that he had been in Southern California one time, and he talked to people back in northern Iraq, and he was watching the moon rise. They were watching it set. So they were looking at it exactly the same time, but it's just a different part of the sky for them because we're on different parts of this round planet. And then there's always somebody who's not satisfied with it. And this is a series of moon pictures that a friend in, I'm blanking on his name now. I'll come up with it, but it's something for everybody to see. He's in France, is on the coast of Brittany. Other things that we see over a shorter distance, it would include bright meteors like this one over California. But mostly, we just like to look up at the sky. This has Ben Canales, an astrophotographer. These pictures are all from photographers of Tuan, the world at night. Babak Tafashi spoke about that earlier today. If you missed that, you should go back into the archives here and watch it and see some of the amazing things that he and the other photographers do. So here is at the end of a night, very tired, just lying down in the snow. That's Crater Lake in Oregon in the USA. Well, so I mentioned eclipses, and this is an eclipse, one picture that I took over the Great Wall of China at the western end of the Great Wall on the edge of the desert, where people would strike out on the Silk Road. And this is something that I started experiencing more international connections through this. This is not where I happened to be at this one, which was in 2006, but you can see that part of astronomy and part of these exciting things is always sharing. So we hand out the eclipse glasses, take extras to give them to the locals there. And this is along the track in Africa. This was an annular eclipse in Panama. One of the members of the tour I led that was showing his video to some of the locals there. This one actually, I'm cheating, that's a Mercury transit, but it's at the Vatican. And it's a great picture showing how we share this with everybody. This one's in Egypt in 2006. Some students looking at it there. And this is, again, back in Africa. I think it was the same eclipse. And then we have Babak, who was on earlier today, hanging out with the locals in the total eclipse of 2003 in Antarctica. They're very friendly, apparently. So he's there with a few 100,000 close personal friends. Well, one eclipse in 1999 took me to Iran. And this is my telescope being used to observe the partial phases of the total eclipse, which occurred here. And it was a very, very interesting and eye-opening experience for me. But one of the things that I didn't understand at first and came to understand later was that I was immediately surrounded by these young men, students and women, who gave me a book or a piece of paper and a pen or pencil, and I realized after a while they wanted my autograph. Why? They didn't know who I was. They knew I was an American scientist. That's all that mattered. It was a big deal to them to meet Americans. That's one of the things that I learned. Here's a class at a historical site that really wanted to talk to us, which we did through translators. They were just interested in what we thought of the country and so on. It turns out that this is what international travel does, is destroy all the preconceived ideas you have. Extremely pro-American country, the people. And this is all people to people. My wife at a girls' school was a big hit, and at an agricultural college with the students there. And a small observatory in northern Tehran, educational observatory. One of the things that I realized after a while is it's mostly young girls who are involved in astronomy. It's overwhelmingly women, and most of the world it's mainly young people. That young man in there is a graduate student now, and I'm still in contact with him. So we visited a town about astronomy, and it was a big deal to them. It's a town of about 10,000 in southern Iran, but they are mad about astronomy. There isn't time for me to tell you the whole story of this town, but there's one teacher. There's actually a movie about him and one of his students, which I can tell people about if they want to know. And this is a later visit. And of course, they wanted me to speak to everybody in the town with all the leaders in the front there. And, you know, they quoted from the Quran. This is just one panel of what they did, because they wrote in the original Arabic, Farsi, and English on different walls on the road on the way to a small observatory they built just for us to pass by. And this is a small observatory they were building. So, and the same thing happened when I returned with a group to tour people, a group of people on a tour that I led with Babak to observe the 2004 Venus transit. That is a tomb of Cyrus the Great in the background, 2,500 years old now, and being interviewed and signing autographs and so on. So these experiences really showed me that no matter what the situation and whatever the problem there is between the people and the governments, we not only could get along and connect each other through astronomy, but we really liked what they were doing. They liked us. I loved them. I've been back to the country many times. Now here is back in Kurdistan. And this was, the reason I show this is this was in 2006. I'd been to Baghdad a few years earlier, right before the invasion. And they were very isolated. And people don't understand why, with a little bit of budget they had, they couldn't get equipment because they didn't have credit cards. They couldn't order online. If you sent them something, it would be stolen before it got there. So I took a ton, not a ton, but it's at least a quarter of a ton of equipment to them, including all of this stuff. The telescope was sold for less than half its value by somebody who wanted to support them. Everything else was donated. I brought them 3D glasses and 3D materials. It was donated by Rainbow Symphony. Mark Margolis there is a good friend. They'd never seen any 3D stuff before. Now, this is 2006. Maybe they have more access to it now. But the thing that really struck me at this time is this. They put out a special edition. And because I had been there, they felt they weren't alone anymore. This is the Amateur Astronomers Association of Kurdistan. And this is just the beginning. it's a bit overwhelming to see something like this and to realize that they were just starved for the connection with other people who were passionate about astronomy. And this created connections between the people of this isolated area of Iraq and the people of the United States. And it was at this time that I was considering expanding these things into Astronomers Without Borders. It makes a really big difference just to be connected with each other. Now, it's easier now online, but this was a while ago, but it's still very important. And there isn't as much connection around the world as people think, because not everybody is on Zoom right now. A lot of people still don't have internet. Now, John mentioned 100 hours of astronomy, and we did have a huge event. I was in charge of all of it, except for there was an incredible 24-hour webcast from 80 different observatories around the world. Not that easy back in those days, but the biggest thing that we had was the public star party. And we had, I think there were around 10,000 telescopes that were set out around the world. It's hard to say, I'm sorry, 10,000 events with multiple telescopes at each one. And I know there were at least 500,000 people, and maybe 1 million people looked through telescopes in that one night. So it was a very big deal and hasn't been repeated since. And yes, if you're wondering, this is not a composite. Those fireworks are real. So hopefully nobody was looking in that direction when they went off. Biggest telescope I know of, I think this is a 36-inch in the UK. And these are all representative of what can happen around the world when everybody does things together. These are little ones, but there were 100 of them. This is in China, of course, where they had 100 telescopes for 100 hours. That telescope that I took to Kurdistan, here is an old Kurdish man in Kurdish dress who is looking through it during that night. Identical telescope, I forget if it's Peru or Bolivia. Even in Baghdad, which was very dangerous at the time. And in Bangladesh, I don't even remember which Islamic country this is. She has stars on here, so that's why I like this picture. In Kathmandu, those of you who do public outreach, you'll recognize these pictures. You've seen this a million times. It's the same thing over and over again, but it is just different clothing, different colored skin. But look at the child's face. Look at this. It happens to be India. It could be anywhere. Of course, in Iran, there could be one person, in this case in Long Beach, California, during the daytime, showing the sun to somebody, or in Argentina where there were huge crowds at these events. But there's one reason why we do this, and one thing that really makes a difference and makes astronomy so powerful, and that's this. This is the payoff. This is the jackpot. When you see this, a child looking through a telescope, in this case, an H-alpha telescope at the sun, and seeing detail on the sun. Remember that people have not seen these things before. Many of you out there, dark sky advocates, you may not be amateur astronomers. There are many reasons for being a dark sky advocate. But the night sky really gives us a chance to see things out into the universe that can be life-changing. Oh, where is this? Well, does it matter? It happens to be Romania, but it could have been anywhere. We all have that reaction. If you've ever shown somebody Saturn for the first time, or the moon on at a good phase, you've experienced this, and that's why you keep doing it, right? Well, so this is a teachable moment in Munich, and I'm sure she got that corrected and got to the right end of it. I've also done a fair amount of work in astronomy for the blind, and that's what this is. There are books and so on. There's also even observing for the blind, those who are not totally blind. There are quite a few different things for the disabled. Astronomy is something that every person is interested in. Everybody, whether you can see it or not, they eat it up just like everybody else. Whether then there are now sign language signs in different languages for astronomical terms. Everybody's interested in what is out there. It's something really primal. It's like something we're born with. And it's all about sharing with other people, as this girl shows in Brazil during that same night. So others, later after founding Astronomers Without Borders, we would get some pictures during star parties and things of others, a congregation and I'm sorry, I forget which country this is. It's someplace in North Africa. It could be Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, I'm not sure. A group in Pakistan. The young people, again, this happens to be the Philippines, celebrating the Sun Day during Global Astronomy Month. Global Astronomy Month was the follow-up that we started for 100 hours of astronomy to keep it going, but it was actually expanded into many more things. So this is in Oman. And one of the things we started back then was video conferences. Now, today, right now, at this moment, half the world is probably on some kind of online platform, chatting with a friend and sharing separate glasses of wine or something like that. This was not common then. You can see the laptop and a microphone plugged in. This is a group in Brazil, and they are speaking with a club in India. This was a big deal back then, going back to about 2010 or something like that. It was very unusual. We started larger programs where we would have many different participants from around the world, some doing outreach at the time, though that's a little bit harder. This was done in collaboration with CosmoQuest. We have, I believe these are in the Philippines, but there is also Vietnam, the US, Morocco, Brazil, New Zealand, Ghana, Sri Lanka. This is where people were all at the same time in various degrees of sleep deprivation because of the weird hour they were talking at. And this is always a lot of fun. One of the things that was started by a group in Iran was called Star Peace. And I mention this now because it really is the whole idea of trying to unify people together. And their idea was to, because they live in a country that's got a lot of conflict, they live in a rough neighborhood. They've had an 8-year war with Iraq. They've got Afghanistan next door. They wanted to have star parties at the borders between amateur astronomers of their country and another country. So they were going to do it with Iraq. I don't remember which ones they had. It could have been done at Turkey. And the idea was to spread this around. Now, this didn't continue because this was college students who did this. And college students will work on these things for 4 years and then move on to something else, and it doesn't happen. But there have been many other things. One of the things that happened during this, this was during Global Astronomy Month many years ago. It was called 30 Nights of Star Peace. And every night there would be a different online, if it wasn't in person, event where they would be connected together and doing astronomy together, even looking at the same things with their telescopes from different places within the time zones that were similar. And so there were a lot of countries involved in that. India and Pakistan, they had a star party together. Their border is so militarized, they couldn't get within about a quarter mile of each other. They could barely see each other, and they spoke to each other on their phones, but they couldn't really, get it right up to the fence there. So here's the thing with the overview effect, Ron Guerin's the orbital perspective. It's common for those who have left our planet and look back and seen Earth as a planet among the cosmos to come back with an altered perspective about our home planet. when they are out there, after a few days, they no longer see. It's not just that they don't see the borders. It just becomes one place. It's not that it's a blur. It's just that there is nothing that stops it. It's a continuum. It is all one place, and that's how they see it. Now, the thing is that few of us are ever going to leave the Earth and be able to look back and see Earth from space. But from the surface of the Earth, as day fades to night, our view of space presents the overview effect to all of us. And we can get that sense looking out at the planets, at the stars, and know that there are others looking at the same thing. On this round spaceship Earth that we are on, we are only looking out different windows. This is not like we're in different places completely, but we see something different and it turns around and others see the same thing. It's like being in a car, or we're all in a big bus. Some people look out the right side, some people look out the left. When the bus turns, you end up seeing the same things because you're all traveling together. Now, the big question that's relevant for International Dark Sky Week is, what if we lost it? What if we could no longer stand beneath a starry sky? What would that mean to us? Without the night sky, we would lose sight of our place in the universe. If we had nothing but clouds all the time, what would we lose? We forget that we're all citizens of the Milky Way. We can no longer see ourselves as crew members together on Spaceship Earth. We lose our heritage. It's so much a part of it, of us. We lose our identity. Night sky above, our window to the universe, actually grounds us. It puts us in our place here on Earth. Space isn't someplace else. Space is here. Frank White, once at a presentation I was at, happened to be a space conference, said, how many of you would like to go into space? Everybody raised their hands. And he said, well, congratulations, you made it. Those of us who look to the night sky know we're there, but it's all too few number of people. And I work quite a bit with IDA, with the founder, the co-founder, Dave Crawford, gave presentations around the world about dark skies. I can tell you, people care. So just as John said, to those of you who are on the front lines of this, supporting IDA, advocating for dark skies, bringing back what many people don't realize we have lost. It's a very, very important battle. And I hope that we can get back to where we should be and save what we have. And that is it.
Thank you, Mike. That was a really inspirational talk. And anybody who has traveled outside their own country, I think your words really resonate about how that travel and the interaction with people directly in other places will just change your whole perspective. Absolutely. It really changes the way that we look at the world. We have quite an audience that's watching us right now. I'm interested to see if they have any questions as we kind of wait on some of those. I have a couple for you myself. I would start by asking you, is there, right now we're in a real interesting period of time in history. And it's one that really none of us is prepared for. And a lot of us are finding ourselves at home a lot at night for the first time. And there are people who are, as you pointed out, people looking through telescopes for the first time, but there are people just experiencing the night and the nighttime sky for the first time. What can we take from this experience? And when people are out at night, wherever they live, light polluted or dark, what can they take from that experience and learn from it, do you think?
That's a good question. I haven't really thought about that. I know a lot of amateur astronomers are out there in their backyards looking through telescopes and so on. But I have also given some thought to some of the people that I know who have very big, that are social influencers, that have very big followers, about how we can team up to use this moment. What I see is the entire world, maybe not as together as it should be, but this is something that is affecting the entire world. And it's something that we should be addressing together. Now, for various reasons, and there's a lot of finger pointing to go around, it doesn't happen. We still have this tribalism. Ron Guerin's motto is, "The key is we." And yeah, there are a lot of people who believe, and I think it's probably true, that if we just got together and collaborated on things, we could just solve all the world's problems. But that's not human nature to do that. So I actually am thinking about getting some influencers together to it's one of the things I didn't mention, to try and address this as something global that we're all in together, and it really brings that forward. I don't think there are any instances of lights going out like the big LA earthquake we had 25 years ago, where people went outside in the early morning and saw the Milky Way and called the police because there was something weird up in the sky. I wish we could have something like that. It's an awakening, but it really is a time to be sympathetic to each other. At least, the first time I went to Iran, I came back and I wrote articles for Sky and Telescope and Mercury and gave presentations about the astronomy in Iran. It was mostly about the people. Well, it is about, every story is about the people. And even somebody I knew who is real hardcore about, against the Iranian government, he was the first one to say, how can we get them telescopes? Because they didn't have any. So it is a time I think that we could take advantage of. And I hope we will.
So here's a question that's coming to us from YouTube that is especially relevant on a day like today, which, as I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, is the anniversary of the launch of the Hubble Space Telescope into space. And of course, that, as I said, it really changed the way that we talk about astronomy and the night sky. And people were really wowed by all of the fantastic images that Hubble has produced over the years. And something that comes up not infrequently in our line of work is people say, well, if things get too bad down here with light pollution, let's just put up more space telescopes. Isn't that the answer to the question? And I imagine you might take a different opinion on that. And I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
And way to go, Adam. I just said that's why he's starting an astronomy club. Way to go. Let me know if you need advice. I love helping get things started. Okay, so the idea of putting more space telescopes up there, yeah, we can do the science and we can take pictures. But let me ask you, would you rather see pictures of Paris, or would you rather go there? I mean, anybody who's been there knows it's not the same. The first time I traveled someplace, I remember going to Washington, D.C. for the first time. And every time I saw something about it from then on, I said, what? That picture is not the same as it used to be. So this isn't about seeing something. This is about an experience. It's not looking at pictures or videos of roller coasters. It's riding them. When you walk out under a night sky, it's something that's really profound. And it's one of those things like total eclipses and a taste of something you've never tasted before, and many other things that we do that you can only experience directly because it's a personal experience. It's just not about seeing it. We can do the science with the space telescopes. That's great. But we lose something in ourselves. This is really, I don't get this dramatic about things. Usually it's like it's a part of our soul, because one of the things, you know, as a scientist with a science background, people say all the time, people have looked up to the sky in wonder from the beginning of time. Well, how do we know that? You know, we just know it. It's not, we know that if they picked something up and dropped it, it fell to Earth. So it's just a part of us, and we need that.
Mm-hmm. So I imagine that sometimes light pollution comes up in the course of your presentations, or people might ask about it. And is there something that you tend to tell people that they can do? This is a question coming from Amy on Facebook. What can people do in order to protect the night sky?
Well, I'm glad Amy's asking the question. I would rather punt that to you, John, because you're there. you are one of the generals on that front. To me, I've been an organizer of projects and leader of organizations and projects my whole life. My tendency would be to get something started and bring people together and get them into a group to act together. Because, like Ron says, the key is we. It's collaboration. What you guys really need is a movement. It's not a community. It's not a network. It's a movement. It's a social movement. And being a part of that, I think, is what's important. The last time I was in Iran, I was on an island in the Persian Gulf, right off the Strait of Hormuz, in the Strait of Hormuz. It was interesting. And I gave a presentation on dark skies. And it started this huge discussion about what they could do. Most of these people were from Tehran, and I see somebody from my area in nearby Los Angeles said something about really need help here in Los Angeles. And I know, well, I've lived here my whole life. And they were going to organize and so on. That's what needs to be done. But, you know, everybody goes back to their work. So, you know, my answer is what I'm used to, is bring in the people. If I was going to do it, I tell people to go to the IDA website and get your resources. And I'll leave it to you to make specific recommendations.
No, that's great. We need more communicators out there that are bringing this message to the masses. Of course,
Yeah,
there's only so much that we can do here from here in Tucson.
Absolutely.
That also makes me think of, generally speaking, when you give these presentations, are there topics that you personally are more excited to present? What sort of things do you think are going on in astronomy right now that are particularly interesting?
Well, it's been a long time since I've talked about astronomy in general. I started out, you know, in the 70s, doing public outreach in different places, and then giving presentations. I haven't done that by itself for a long time. I've been focusing on the people and the projects and getting things done for quite a long time now. But frankly, I like to talk about anything, as some of you can probably tell, as my wife will tell you. I can go on forever. The things that I enjoy the most are the questions that people ask. I have to read the latest on new discoveries in astronomy, because I know when I go to the gym or see friends someplace else, people are going to ask me about that, and I need to be able to answer it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they're understanding these things is like adding a new dimension to your understanding of the universe, because nothing is like it is here on Earth. So explain these things, and people are wow, because it's like opening a door to another dimension. So I don't think I have a favorite, but I love to be able to see those lights go on and know that from that point on, that person's going to have something, you know, an additional perspective on something.
Mm-hmm. And a somewhat, again, related question. This is coming from Kelly on Facebook, who's asking about ways to get people to care about this issue, which is, you know, we confront this all the time. I think even though it's asked in the question of light pollution, there's a bigger sense about astronomy and the night sky and our experience with that. You've said how people are sort of hungering for this. What do you do about the skeptics? What do you do about the people who look at it and say, well, you know, we have more pressing matters down here on Earth? Why should I care about what's going on up in the night sky?
Yeah, well, we get that a lot. And it's a good question. You know, most of the time, these people, I encounter them because they're looking through a telescope. I mean, they do care about it. It's of interest. First, one of the problems, I think, with getting people to realize what is missing, like Kelly, if she's in Los Angeles, hopefully she gets out into the desert and experiences the night sky the way it's supposed to be. But too many people have never seen it. Well, I've gotten the World at Night was a AWB project when it started, and I get questions from people like, "Why do you make the sky look like that? It doesn't look like that." Well, yeah, it does. You've just never seen it. That's the biggest problem. Awareness is the biggest problem. I've had some ideas for projects that I haven't been able to implement, but maybe I'll be able to. Now, the idea is taking people out to the desert in this case, or out to the mountains, or someplace where it's dark, and a TV program or online. Yes, and Kelly, Joshua Tree is awesome for a lot of reasons, and the sky is one of them. And just showing their reactions. And people can look at that and say, well, okay, there's something there. I mean, there's something going on I don't understand. Just like with the eclipse in 2017, I think that was my 8th total solar eclipse. I can't explain it to anybody. And then so many people said, oh, now I get it. And that's why you couldn't explain that. So that's the biggest problem that I see. Why does it matter? I don't know, why would Joni Mitchell, and one of my favorite of her songs back in the 60s, you know, it was an ecology song. She asks, she says, cut down all the trees and put them in a tree museum and charge people $1.50 just to see them. You know, would you care if the forest disappeared? Is it only what's exactly right where you are that matters? I mean, there are scientific reasons for all this. You know, you can say, well, we need the ecology because otherwise we'll have this, we'll have that, and so on. People don't get it because it's not affecting, they don't know it's not, that it's affecting them on a daily basis. But does it really seem right? Would we want to, I was in that archaeological museum in Baghdad that was destroyed after the US invasion during the chaos. And I'm not the only one that's pained to see that our heritage, our culture, our history, our connections with our past, which is another way we place ourselves. Who are we? Where did we come from? To see that destroyed. The sky it's half of our environment. And it's somebody that asks that question, they need to see the answer for themselves. There are so many ways in which it's important. You know, what if the sky was always cloudy and we never saw the stars? We'd have no 5-star reviews of restaurants. I don't know what they'd use on Yelp. I mean, it's everywhere. And I have a lot of examples of people not even realizing it. So to me, it's cultural. We really need to keep our culture.
Well, and to that point, since we're nearly out of time, I'd like to end on a bit of a hopeful note here. Question from William from India, who is on YouTube, and again, bringing us back to the present moment and what's happening to our world. He asks whether astronomy could be a uniting force in building a new world after the epidemic has passed. And we've been seeing some stories in the media about apparently, you know, the air is clearing in certain cities, the air pollution. Maybe there's some indications that places that were affected by lockdown orders have seen a little bit less light pollution. If we have a chance to remake things, how astronomy and a knowledge of the night sky and bringing us together could transform that new world that we're going to move into pretty soon. So if you have any concluding thoughts on that, we'd be glad to hear them.
Well, I think there are a lot of things that astronomy can do. I think there are very specific things we can use astronomy for because of the very universal nature. This is after watching the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, a Ron Guerin, Nicole Stott, Anusha Ansari, 3 astronauts I know, we're working together, talking about uniting through space. It's one of the things that I've been thinking of, and I'll probably be talking to them soon about getting together to do something. I believe that is possible. Yes, it's a challenge, but there are times when things change enough to shake us up. I have a friend in New Delhi who I confirmed with, yeah, things have really cleared up here as far as pollution. Will it go right back to the way it was? Maybe it will. Maybe the kids will remember what it was like, and they will, and that's William's question. And maybe they will be the ones to do it. You know, it's mostly the children. They need to grow up in a way understanding that there are things to be done. Astronomy is a powerful force for uniting, because it is common to all of us. It is, for those who understand it, important to all of us. It is a passion. It is something basic. So astronomy can be used for many things. And that comes back around to the answer to your question about what I'll be doing in the future. And that's basically the idea. It remains to be seen if COVID-19 will be a turning point, hopefully in medicine and public health first, but it could be. We'll see.
Well, that's a great way to end it, Mike. A very hopeful outlook on the future. Mike, if there's anybody who's listening who wants to contact you or wants to learn more, what's the best way for them to find you?
Well, there's my Twitter. You can tweet at me. Facebook, I'm on Facebook. And let's see. Let me see if I have that. Did I not give that to you? Because you're not seeing it.
We have the Astronomers Without Borders.
Yeah, so reach me, Facebook, the URL is mike.simmons.awb, or just look me up there. I'm willing to give out my email address for people that want to write. Like I've got nothing else to do, but I love talking to, I answer people all the time. It makes a big difference. I'm addicted to it. So my address is mike@mikesimmons.net.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Mike, for your time today and for sharing what you know with us. It's been a really wonderful discussion. We're really glad to hear from you about this. So once again, thank you for sharing your time.
It was a delight. Thanks for having me on.
Right. And thanks to all of you out there again for attending today's presentation. We have a number of presentations left before Dark Sky Week ends on Sunday. And so again, please visit idsw.darksky.org for more information and a schedule for what's coming up next. And the videos of presentations that have already happened during the week are posted to the IDA YouTube channel as soon as they become available. So be sure to check there again as well. And we will see you all tomorrow for the next live presentation.